Once again, Aang struggles to master the element of earth. Every attempt ends in failure, and Toph shows absolutely no sympathy. She constantly pushes him harder, mocking every mistake, and insisting that if he can't stand his ground now, he'll never survive the battles waiting for him. Katara watches the training with concern. Unlike Toph, she believes encouragement is sometimes more powerful than criticism. She gently suggests that Aang learns better when people believe in him instead of constantly pointing out his failures. Toph simply laughs. According to her, Aang hasn't done anything worth praising yet. For Toph, earthbending isn't about confidence, it's about determination, she orders Aang to continue his exercises until he finally learns what it means to stand like a mountain. As everyone prepares to continue their journey toward Ba Sing Se, Sokka seems unusually distracted. Katara notices the tension between him and Suki after everything that happened during their last adventure. Although Sokka insists nothing is wrong, it's obvious something is bothering him. Before anyone can continue the conversation, Toph suddenly freezes. She places her feet firmly on the ground. The vibrations beneath the earth tell her something no one else can sense. Something massive is approaching, and it's moving incredibly fast. Immediately, everyone prepares for another attack. Their first thought is Princess Azula. Maybe she has caught up with them again. Or perhaps Zuko has returned for another attempt to capture the Avatar. But Toph quickly realizes the truth. Whatever is coming, it's following her. Not Aang, not the rest of Team Avatar, her. Without wasting another second, Aang orders the refugees to continue, moving toward Ba Sing Se while he and Toph stay behind to erase their tracks and mislead whoever is chasing them. Aang immediately begins planning an escape route in case things go badly, but Toph becomes frustrated. She tells him this is exactly why he still cannot earthbend. Every time danger appears, Aang's first instinct is to run. Earthbenders don't run. They stand, they endure, they face danger directly. This becomes another lesson in Aang's difficult. Training. Earth is the complete opposite of air. Air teaches freedom, movement, avoiding conflict. Earth teaches patience. Strength. Standing firm against impossible odds. For Aang, abandoning his air nomad instincts may prove harder than learning the bending itself. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the Earth Kingdom, another important lesson is taking place, Uncle. Iroh has finally decided to teach Zuko one of the most advanced techniques in firebending. Not how to create lightning, but how to survive. Iroh explains that lightning is the purest and most dangerous form of firebending. Trying to generate it requires complete inner peace, something Zuko has not yet achieved. Instead, Iroh demonstrates a technique inspired by waterbenders. Rather than resisting lightning, a firebender must allow the energy to flow naturally through the body. The lightning enters through one arm, travels safely through the stomach, and exits through the other arm without touching the heart. If the energy reaches the heart, death is almost certain. Zuko carefully practices the movement until he finally understands the technique. Excited by his progress, he asks Uncle Iroh to teach him how to create lightning as well, but Iroh immediately refuses. He tells his nephew that true lightning bending demands complete emotional balance, and Zuko is still carrying far too much anger, too much pain, and too much guilt. Those words strike Zuko harder than any attack. For the first time, he begins to realize that the greatest obstacle standing in his way isn't Azula. It isn't the Avatar. It's the conflict still raging inside his own heart. As Aang and Toph prepare to confront whoever has been following them, the mysterious pursuers finally reveal themselves. To Aang's surprise, they aren't Fire Nation soldiers. Standing before them are several earthbenders led by a familiar face, the Boulder. The same loud and overconfident fighter who lost to Toph during the Earth Rumble tournament. This time, however, he isn't looking for revenge. He has been hired by Toph's parents to bring their runaway daughter back home. The Boulder proudly announces that Lady and Lord Beifong have sent them to rescue Toph, from what they believe, are the Avatars. Dangerous adventures. Toph can't help but laugh, she sarcastically. Pretends to be a helpless little girl being kidnapped by the Avatar, mocking the ridiculous story her parents have believed. The boulder completely misses the joke. Convinced he is carrying out an honorable mission, he prepares for battle. Seeing the Earthbenders closing in, Toph suddenly steps back and turns toward Aang. Instead of fighting beside him, she gives him an unexpected order. This battle is his training. If he truly wants to learn earthbending, he must face them himself. Aang stares at her in disbelief. He reminds Toph that he still hasn't mastered the basics. But Toph refuses to help. She tells him that the only way to understand Earth is to stop running and stand his ground. As the boulder charges forward, Aang does exactly what comes naturally. He dodges, he jumps, he flips through the air, avoiding every attack without throwing a single earthbending strike. Toph immediately becomes frustrated. She watches Aang relying entirely on his airbending instincts. Every move keeps him alive, but every move also proves he still doesn't understand the nature of Earth, she shouts. Instructions from the sidelines: plant your feet, stop moving, face the attack. The boulder unexpectedly joins in. Between launching massive boulders, he begins giving Aang advice as well. Even the other earthbenders start shouting completely different instructions. One tells him to become one with the stone. Another tells him to study the terrain. Third insists he should feel the earth beneath his feet. The battlefield quickly turns into complete chaos. Everyone is trying to teach the Avatar at the same time. Poor Aang has no idea who he should listen to. Completely overwhelmed, he fails to perform even the simplest earthbending move. Realizing the training has become impossible, Toph finally steps in. With incredible precision, she effortlessly defeats the earthbenders surrounding them. Even the mighty boulder is once again thrown aside by the young girl he underestimated. Although Toph wins the fight, she isn't satisfied. She tells Aang that he learned almost nothing. His instincts continue pushing him toward escape instead of resistance, and until he changes that mindset, he will never become a true earthbender. Before the group has time to recover, another danger suddenly appears: Earth. Kingdom soldiers arrive at the scene. Toph immediately realizes that staying here will only create more problems. She makes a decision. She refuses to return home. No matter what her parents want, she has chosen her own path. Her place is beside the Avatar. Without wasting another second, Team Avatar continues their journey toward Ba Sing Se. Meanwhile, another storyline begins unfolding far from Aang's group. Inside a crowded refugee caravan, a familiar face quietly struggles through the growing chaos. It is Jet. Together with Longshot and Smellerbee, he is escorting frightened refugees toward the safety of Ba Sing Se. The exhausting journey has pushed everyone to their limits. Food is running low. People are injured. Hope is slowly disappearing. When one exhausted, refugee collapses behind the group. Most people continue walking, afraid that stopping will leave them behind. Jet refuses to abandon him. Ignoring the danger, he rushes back and helps the man to his feet. Longshot silently joins him without hesitation. Together, they make sure no one is left behind. That small act of kindness reminds everyone that surviving the war isn't only about defeating enemies. Sometimes, it's simply about refusing to leave another person behind. Finally, after days of traveling, the enormous walls of Ba Sing Se appear on the horizon. The legendary city stretches farther than anyone imagined. Its gigantic stone walls seem completely impossible to breach. For thousands of refugees, the sight fills them with hope. After everything they have suffered, they believe they have finally reached safety. But as they approach the gates, something immediately feels wrong. The city is strangely quiet. The massive entrance stands before them, yet there is no welcoming crowd. No celebration, only heavily armed guards, waiting behind the walls. Instead of being welcomed as refugees, every newcomer is treated with suspicion. Families are separated, people are questioned, One by one, they disappear into holding areas built inside the walls themselves. Even Team Avatar is caught completely off guard. They expected sanctuary. Instead, their first experience inside. Ba Sing Se feels more like entering a prison than entering the greatest city in the Earth Kingdom. As Team Avatar steps through the enormous gates of Ba Sing Se, they expect to find the safe haven that people across the Earth Kingdom have dreamed about for generations. Instead, they are met with suspicion and strict security. The guards separate every refugee into individual holding cells built directly inside the city's outer wall. Families are divided without explanation, and no one is told how long they will remain there. The refugees who have already endured war, hunger, and endless travel now find themselves treated like potential criminals. Aang cannot understand what is happening. These people have come seeking protection, yet the city they believed would save them is refusing to trust them. Suddenly, voices echo from inside the stone walls. Katara hears frightened refugees calling for help. One by one, they explain that every person has been locked inside a separate chamber carved into the massive wall itself. Toph closes her eyes and places both hands on the ground. Through the vibrations beneath her feet, she senses exactly where everyone is being held. She even detects Appa and Momo trapped inside solid stone compartments designed to keep powerful creatures under control. Without hesitation, Aang asks Toph to free them all. Toph begins breaking open the prison cells one after another, but before she can finish, she feels another force pushing back against her earthbending. Someone else is controlling the stone. Powerful Earth Kingdom soldiers suddenly surround the group. Ordering everyone to surrender immediately, Aang prepares to fight. But Katara quickly stops him. She reminds him that they have finally reached the Earth Kingdom's capital. Fighting its soldiers will only create more problems. Just when the situation appears ready to explode into another battle, Toph makes a surprising decision. She steps forward and reveals her identity. She presents the official Bei Fong family seal, one of the most respected noble families in the entire Earth Kingdom. The moment the guards recognize her family name, their attitude changes completely. Instead of treating Team Avatar like ordinary refugees, they now recognize them as honored guests connected to one of the kingdom's most influential families. The commander immediately orders Aang, Katara, Sokka, and Toph to be released. However, there is one condition: only the Avatar and his closest companions may enter the city. Every other refugee must remain behind until officials complete their processing. Aang refuses to leave everyone else. He argues that these people have suffered enough and deserve immediate help. But the guards refuse to change their orders. Toph quietly tells Aang that arguing here will accomplish nothing. If they can reach the Earth King, perhaps they can convince him to help everyone waiting outside. Reluctantly, Aang agrees. Moments later, a cheerful young woman dressed in elegant green robes approaches the group. She introduces herself with a warm smile. "My name is Zhu Di," she explains that she has been assigned as their official guide during their stay in Ba Sing Se. According to her, every important visitor receives a personal assistant to make sure their experience inside the city is comfortable and enjoyable. At first glance, Zhu Di seems polite, friendly, and eager to help, but almost immediately, something about her behavior feels unusual. Whenever Aang mentions the Fire Nation or the war, she gently changes the subject. When Katara insists they must speak with the Earth King immediately because the war is growing worse every day, Zhu Di simply smiles. Then she calmly says something that leaves the entire group speechless. There is no war in Ba Sing Se. For several seconds, no one says a word. Aang can hardly believe what he has just heard. Outside the city's walls, thousands of refugees have lost everything because of the Fire Nation. Entire villages have been destroyed. Families have been separated. Soldiers continue fighting every single day. Yet inside the greatest city of the Earth Kingdom, officials speak as though none of it exists. Zhu Di continues smiling as if she has said nothing unusual. She begins describing the city's beautiful rivers, fertile farmland, and peaceful neighborhoods, proudly explaining that Ba Sing Se has remained prosperous and self-sufficient for generations. As the group follows her deeper into the city, they finally witness the incredible scale of Ba Sing Se towering walls divide the capital into multiple districts. The lower ring is filled with workers, merchants, and refugees trying to rebuild their lives. Beyond that lies the middle ring, home to wealthy businesses, schools, and markets. Far above everything else stands the upper ring, where nobles, government officials, and the Earth King himself reside. The city is breathtaking. Clean streets, magnificent architecture, beautiful gardens, bustling marketplaces. From the outside, it appears to be the safest place in the entire world. Yet the more Aang observes, the more uneasy he becomes. Everything looks perfect, perhaps little too perfect. Every citizen behaves the same way. Every official gives nearly identical answers. Every difficult question is politely avoided. Aang begins realizing that Ba Sing Se may be hiding far more than anyone could have imagined, and whatever secret lies beneath the city's peaceful appearance, it is something powerful enough to make an entire kingdom pretend that the 100-Year War doesn't even exist. As Team Avatar travels farther into Ba Sing Se, they can't help but admire the city's beauty. The streets are spotless, businesses are thriving, and people walk through the markets without showing the slightest concern. It feels as though the 100-Year War has never reached these walls. But to Aang, the peaceful atmosphere feels strangely unnatural. Only a few days ago, he watched entire villages destroyed by the Fire Nation. Thousands of refugees had risked everything just to reach this city. Yet here, everyone acts as if those terrible events never happened. Ju Di continues guiding the group through each district. With the same cheerful smile, she proudly explains that the lower ring is home to hard-working citizens and newly arrived refugees who are beginning fresh lives. The middle ring is filled with merchants, craftsmen, schools, and successful businesses. Finally, beyond another enormous wall lies the upper ring, where the kingdom's nobility and the Earth King reside. Everything appears perfectly organized, almost too organized. Aang once again asks if they can meet the Earth King immediately. He explains that he carries urgent information about the Fire Nation's growing threat and believes the Earth King must hear it as soon as possible. Ju Di politely assures him that a formal request has already been submitted. Until then, she insists they simply enjoy the city's famous hospitality. Although her words sound reassuring, they never actually answer Aang's question. Every important request seems to disappear into endless procedures. Eventually, the group arrives at a magnificent estate known as the Avatar Villa. For centuries, this luxurious residence has been prepared for every avatar who visits Ba Sing Se. Beautiful gardens surround the building, elegant rooms have already been prepared, and servants wait to fulfill every possible request. It is far more comfortable than anywhere Team Avatar has stayed since. Leaving the Southern Water Tribe, even Appa is given his own stable beside the villa. At first, everyone is amazed, but Sokka immediately notices something unusual. Instead of feeling welcomed, he feels managed. He quietly gathers the group together and shares his suspicion. According to Sokka, cities like Ba Sing Se don't simply run on laws, they run on bureaucracy. Every request must pass through countless officials before reaching someone with real authority. If they anger the wrong person, they could spend weeks waiting without making any progress. That is why, Sokka explains, they must remain patient and cooperate with Ju Di, whether they like her or not. She is currently the only connection they have to the Earth King. Toph isn't impressed by the explanation. She argues that if Aang is truly the Avatar, nobody should be delaying him. After all, he is the one person capable of saving the world. But Sokka reminds everyone that inside a complicated political system, even the most important people must follow official procedures. Before the discussion can continue, another visitor arrives at the villa. A calm and elegantly dressed man introduces himself as Long Feng. He is the cultural minister of Ba Sing Se and one of the city's highest-ranking officials. Unlike Ju Di, Long Feng speaks with remarkable confidence. He welcomes the Avatar personally and presents each member of the group with carefully selected gifts. Toph receives mineral salts to soothe her tired feet after long days of earthbending. Katara and Sokka are welcomed with thoughtful gifts reflecting their journey. Finally, Long Feng presents Aang with a smooth stone taken from the Eastern Air Temple. The gift immediately captures Aang's attention. Holding the stone in his hands brings back memories of his lost home, his fellow air nomads, and the peaceful life that disappeared 100 years ago. For a brief moment, Aang forgets everything else. Long Feng notices the emotional reaction. Only after creating this feeling of trust does he finally deliver the news everyone has been waiting to hear. The Earth King has officially approved housing, food vouchers, and financial assistance for every refugee who arrived with Team Avatar. Aang feels genuine relief. At least the people they escorted across the Earth Kingdom will finally be safe. Long Feng also confirms that the Earth King has invited the Avatar and his companions to attend a royal gathering at the palace later that evening. According to him, this celebration will provide the perfect opportunity to speak directly with His Majesty. Everything suddenly appears to be working in Team Avatar's favor. Their friends are safe. The refugees will receive help, and a meeting with the Earth King has finally been arranged. But Toph remains unconvinced. She quietly warns the others not to celebrate too early. Something about Long Feng doesn't feel right. Everything has happened far too smoothly. The gifts, the hospitality, the sudden invitation. It all feels carefully planned. Toph has learned throughout her life that whenever powerful, people seem unusually generous. They often expect something in return. As evening approaches, everyone prepares for the royal banquet. Sokka explains the complicated rules of high society, teaching Aang and the others how nobles expect guests to behave. According to him, every smile, every greeting, and every conversation is part of an invisible political game. One wrong move could offend an important official. One careless word could close doors that may never open again. Aang listens carefully, realizing that the battle ahead may not involve bending at all. Instead of fighting soldiers, he may soon find himself navigating the dangerous world of politics. And unknown to Team Avatar, the greatest threat inside Ba Sing Se isn't hiding beyond the city's walls. It's already waiting for them at the heart of the kingdom. As evening falls over Ba Sing Se, Team Avatar begins preparing for their long-awaited meeting with the Earth King. After weeks of traveling through dangerous territory, they finally believe they are only hours away from convincing the kingdom to take action against the Fire Nation. But before leaving for the palace, everyone settles into the Avatar Villa, where the luxury feels almost unreal after everything they have endured. Sokka walks through the enormous rooms, amazed by the elegant furniture, soft beds, and endless hospitality. Yet despite all the comfort surrounding them, he cannot shake the feeling that something isn't right. Toph notices his expression and asks what he's thinking. Sokka explains that cities like Ba Sing Se have their own way of controlling people. They don't always use soldiers or prisons. Instead, they bury visitors beneath rules, paperwork, and endless politeness until they forget why they came in the first place. The others laugh at first, believing Sokka is simply overthinking the situation. But deep down, Aang begins wondering if his friend might actually be right. Meanwhile, Katara decides to visit the refugees who traveled with them from Omashu. She wants to make sure everyone has truly received the food and medical care they were promised. As she walks through the lower ring, she is greeted warmly by families who are finally beginning to rebuild their lives. Children are playing in the streets again. Merchants have started opening small shops. Some refugees even speak about opening businesses and creating new homes inside the city. For the first time in months, many of them feel hopeful. One woman tells Katara that after surviving the horrors of war, she finally believes her family has a future. Hearing those words fills Katara with relief. She begins, thinking that perhaps Ba Sing Se really is the safe haven everyone believed it to be. Then another refugee approaches, carrying a young girl whose arm has swollen badly after being bitten by a poisonous spider. The child's condition is getting worse by the minute. Katara immediately kneels beside her and examines the wound. Using her waterbending, she carefully attempts to draw the venom from the girl's body. She concentrates with all her strength, but despite her efforts, nothing happens. The poison refuses to move. Katara slowly lowers her hands. She apologizes to the frightened family, explaining that some poisons require rare medicinal plants she doesn't have. For one of the few times in her journey, Katara feels completely helpless. The family thanks her anyway, grateful that she tried. Before Katara can continue helping the refugees, Ju Di suddenly appears beside her. Her smile is as calm and polite as ever. She gently reminds Katara that every activity has already been scheduled. The visit to the lower ring has officially ended. It is time to return to the Avatar. Villa. Katara looks around in confusion. She wasn't aware anyone was keeping track of where she went, when. She asks if she's forbidden from speaking with ordinary people. Ju Di calmly insists that isn't the case. She explains that she merely wants to ensure the Avatar's companions remain on schedule while their audience with the Earth King is being arranged. The answer sounds reasonable, yet something about it feels unsettling. Katara realizes she is being watched far more closely than she expected. Back at the villa, the group gathers once again to prepare for the evening's royal celebration. Elegant clothing has already been laid out for each of them. Toph immediately complains about wearing expensive formal outfits she has never enjoyed, pretending to be part of high society. Sokka, however, becomes unusually serious. He explains that royal banquets are nothing like ordinary celebrations. Every guest is trying to impress someone. Every conversation has a purpose. Every smile hides an agenda. According to Sokka, surviving a noble gathering can sometimes be more exhausting than surviving a battlefield. He begins teaching everyone the unwritten rules of upper-class society. Always remain polite. Never interrupt important officials. Speak carefully, bow respectfully, and, above all, never create unnecessary conflict. Katara teases him, wondering how someone like Sokka suddenly became an expert on royal etiquette. Sokka proudly explains that every city has its own rules. Understanding those rules is just another way of winning battles without drawing a sword. Even Toph admits that some of his advice makes sense. As everyone finishes getting ready, memories of old friends begin filling the conversation. Katara learns that Teo has left Ba Sing Se to help resistance fighters in the north. Inspired by his father's inventions, he hopes to teach others how to fight the fire. Nation from the skies using gliders. Aang smiles proudly after hearing the news, knowing that Teo continues. Spreading air nomad ideas reminds him that his people's legacy has not completely disappeared, but the news isn't entirely comforting. Sokka soon discovers that Suki and the Kyoshi warriors have already left the city, believing there was no need for warriors in a place where officials insisted there was no war. They departed to continue helping people elsewhere. Although Sokka tries to hide his disappointment, everyone notices the sadness on his face. He quietly wonders if he missed his chance to tell Suki how much she truly means to him. As the sun begins setting over Ba Sing Se, the group takes one final look at the magnificent city surrounding them. Beautiful streets, towering walls, peaceful gardens, everything appears perfect, yet, beneath that perfect surface, questions continue growing. Why does everyone avoid speaking about the war? Why are visitors constantly monitored? Why does every official give nearly identical answers? And most importantly, who truly controls Ba Sing Se? Team Avatar believes they are about to meet the Earth King. What they don't realize is that the greatest challenge waiting inside the city won't be defeating the Fire Nation. It will be uncovering the truth hidden behind Ba Sing Se's perfect illusion. As night settles over Ba Sing Se, Team Avatar leaves the safety of the Avatar Villa and begins making its way toward the royal palace. For Aang, this meeting represents more than a formal invitation. He believes it is his best opportunity to convince the Earth King to unite the kingdom against the Fire Nation. and finally begin pushing the war toward an end. The closer they get to the palace, the more magnificent the upper ring becomes. Every street is lined with carefully trimmed gardens. Elegant fountains decorate the walkways, and enormous mansions belonging to the kingdom's wealthiest families stretch as far as the eye can see. Guards stand at every entrance, while servants quietly move between buildings carrying food, gifts, and expensive decorations for the evening's celebration. To someone visiting for the first time, Ba Sing Se appears to be a city untouched by conflict. There are no signs of fear, no signs of hunger, no signs of war. It is almost impossible to believe that only a few miles beyond these walls, thousands of refugees continue struggling to survive. As they approach the palace gates, Sokka quietly reminds everyone of his earlier advice. He tells them that every noble attending this gathering will have hidden motives. Some will seek influence, others will seek power, and many will simply want to be seen standing beside the Avatar. Aang smiles politely, believing Sokka is exaggerating once again. After all, they are here to speak with the Earth King, not to play political games. Toph isn't nearly as optimistic. She has spent her entire life surrounded by wealthy families and powerful officials. She knows that behind every polite smile lies a calculation. People with power rarely speak directly. They test each other, they observe, they wait for weakness. As they enter the palace grounds, musicians fill the air with elegant melodies while servants welcome distinguished guests from every corner of the Earth Kingdom. The celebration is grand, but something immediately catches Aang's attention. Very few people are discussing the Fire Nation. Instead, conversations revolve around trade, fashion, architecture, and social status, as though the 100-year war were happening in another world entirely. Aang struggles to understand how an entire kingdom can behave, as if nothing is wrong while so many innocent people continue to suffer. Katara notices the same strange atmosphere. Everyone smiles, everyone laughs, but every conversation feels rehearsed, almost as if the guests have learned which subjects should never be mentioned. Meanwhile, Toph quietly listens to the vibrations beneath her feet. The palace is crowded, yet the rhythm of people's movements feels strangely controlled. Servants appear exactly when needed. Officials seem to know. Where every guest is standing, nothing feels spontaneous. It is as though the entire evening has been carefully choreographed. While the others admire the palace, Sokka studies the officials moving through the crowd. One face immediately stands out: Long Feng. Rather than enjoying the celebration, the cultural minister calmly watches every corner of the room. His expression never changes. He rarely speaks. Yet somehow every servant, every guard, and even Ju Di seem to react to the smallest gesture he makes. Sokka begins wondering whether Long Feng is far more influential than his title suggests. At that moment, Aang is informed that the Earth King will arrive shortly. Relieved, he gathers his friends and once again explains what he plans to say. He intends to tell the king everything: the Fire Nation's growing strength, the destruction of Omashu, the suffering of refugees, the threat posed by Princess Azula, and the urgent need for the Earth Kingdom to prepare for an even greater conflict. For Aang, there is no time to waste. Every day that passes allows the Fire Nation to grow stronger. But before he can meet the Earth King, another delay appears. Officials politely explain that several formal introductions must take place first, then another ceremony, then greetings with the royal court, then the evening banquet. Only after all official traditions have been completed may the Avatar request a private audience. Aang grows increasingly frustrated. Every minute spent following ceremonies is another minute the war continues outside these walls, yet refusing would risk insulting the very people whose help he desperately needs. He has no choice but to wait. Watching all of this unfold, Toph quietly whispers to Sokka. She admits he was right. The city isn't stopping them with force. It's slowing them down with endless rules, exactly as Sokka predicted. For the first time since arriving in Ba Sing Se, Team Avatar realizes that defeating soldiers may be easier than defeating bureaucracy. Outside the palace, the city continues celebrating another peaceful evening. Inside the palace, powerful officials exchange polite smiles while carefully avoiding uncomfortable truths. And somewhere behind those smiling faces, someone is making sure that the war never becomes part of the conversation. Aang has finally reached the capital of the Earth Kingdom. But instead of finding allies ready to fight, he has entered a city built on silence, and before he can save the world, he must first discover who is controlling that silence. As Team Avatar continues settling into life inside Ba Sing Se, each member begins noticing strange details that don't quite fit the city's image of peace and prosperity. At first glance, everything appears perfect. The markets are crowded with merchants. Children play safely in the streets. Musicians perform in every public square. People laugh, shop, and go about their daily lives without fear. But beneath that peaceful surface, something feels carefully controlled. Every official gives nearly identical answers. Every conversation about the fire nation ends almost immediately. Every request to speak with the Earth King seems to disappear into another layer of paperwork. The more Aang observes the city, the more convinced he becomes that someone is deliberately hiding the truth. Meanwhile, Katara cannot stop thinking about the refugees they escorted all the way from Omashu. Although Long Feng promised they would receive homes, food, and protection, she wants to see the situation with her own eyes. She quietly leaves the villa once again and returns to the lower ring. This time, she notices something different. Many of the refugees are smiling again. Some have already begun rebuilding their lives. Families are unpacking their belongings. Small market stalls are opening. Children are finally laughing after weeks of fear. For a brief moment, Katara begins believing that perhaps Ba Sing Se really is giving these people a second chance. One refugee proudly tells her that he hopes to reopen the flower shop he lost during the war. Another family speaks excitedly about starting a new business. For the first time in months, hope is beginning to replace fear. Seeing this reminds Katara why they fought so hard to bring everyone here. Even if the city has secrets, at least innocent people are finally safe. As Katara continues speaking with the refugees, she notices a small crowd gathered around a frightened young girl. The child has been bitten by a poisonous spider, and her arm has swollen badly. Without hesitation, Katara kneels beside her and examines the wound. She focuses her waterbending, attempting to draw the poison from the girl's body just as she has healed countless injuries before. She concentrates, harder than ever, but the venom refuses to move. Again and again she tries. Nothing happens. Finally, Katara lowers her hands. She quietly admits that this poison is beyond her abilities. If only she had a rare medicinal herb known as golden nettle, she could prepare a remedy. Unfortunately, that plant is almost impossible to find. The family thanks her anyway. Although she couldn't heal the girl, they appreciate that someone cared enough to try. The experience leaves Katara frustrated. For someone who has spent so much of her life helping others, being unable to save one injured child feels like a personal failure. Just then, a familiar voice interrupts her thoughts. Ju! Dee has arrived once again, still smiling, still perfectly calm. She gently reminds Katara that visiting hours in the lower ring have ended. According to the official schedule, the Avatar's companions should already be preparing for tonight's royal gathering. Katara looks at her in disbelief. She asks a simple question. Am I not allowed to walk around the city by myself? Ju Dee immediately denies it. She insists that Katara is free to go wherever she wishes. She simply wants to ensure the Avatar's companions remain comfortable and stay on schedule. Her answer sounds polite, yet somehow it also sounds rehearsed. Katara begins realizing that every movement they make inside, Ba Sing Se is being quietly observed. Back at the Avatar Villa, the rest of the group is getting ready for the evening. Banquet elegant robes have been prepared for everyone. Toph groans the moment she feels the expensive fabric she has spent her entire life attending, formal parties hosted by wealthy families. To her, these gatherings are nothing more than competitions disguised as celebrations. Sokka, however, surprises everyone. He suddenly begins giving lessons on high society etiquette. According to him, surviving a royal banquet requires strategy. Never speak too loudly. Never interrupt an important official. Always smile politely, bow correctly, and if someone asks an uncomfortable question, answer carefully without revealing too much. Katara can't help laughing. She never expected Sokka to know so much about noble society. Sokka proudly explains that every city operates like its own battlefield. The only difference is that instead of swords and shields, people fight with influence, reputation, and politics. Toph finally admits that for once, Sokka actually knows what he's talking about. As everyone finishes preparing, the conversation turns toward old friends. Aang learns that Teo has left the city to join resistance fighters in the north, where he hopes to build more gliders and teach others how to fight the fire nation from the skies. The news fills Aang with pride. His air nomad traditions are living on through people who never even met his nation. But another piece of news quickly changes the mood. The Kyoshi warriors have also left Ba Sing Se, believing there was no place for warriors inside a city that claimed there was no war. They continued their journey elsewhere. Sokka quietly lowers his head. He realizes he may not see Suki again for a long time. Although he hides his emotions, everyone notices the disappointment in his eyes. As night finally settles over Ba Sing Se, Team Avatar prepares to enter the royal palace. They believe tonight will bring them one step closer to convincing the Earth King to join the fight against the Fire Nation. What they don't know is that the greatest enemy inside, Ba Sing Se, isn't waiting on the battlefield. It's hiding behind smiles, behind ceremonies, and behind the illusion of perfect peace.